I think there should be like an anti-cast or, some kind of webcast punch card. And then, we can get a free, I guess not free. All right.
We are working on it. Thank you. Yeah.
All right. So welcome everybody to Spooky Security Exercises with your hosts, Amanda Berlin and Jeremy Mio. So we're going to prepare for the Monster Mash, and this is also going to be kind of hands-on. We have a couple hands-on things as we kind of go along. So we're going to be reaching out into Discord for you guys to kind of help us with our exercises here. All right, so here is our roadmap to the Haunted Hacking Cast. We're going to go over some tabletop terror exercises, which we like to call them TTXs, some Macabre Playbooks, kind of scary, some haunted gamification, because we do only have several days until the Halloween day, which is like my favorite day of the year. And then we have a little bit of a GameBot overview and a mini haunting, and then some questions and answers. But again, feel free to ask any questions in Zoom, and we can get to those as we go along. It's the best thing about having two people talk through these things.
And I just wanted to point out my scary shirt. I was thinking about, what is the scariest shirt I have? And I thought about the Cleveland Browns. It's the, that can stop anyone's heart. So I just wanted to,
that's pretty scary.
If you're getting too scared, you can close your eyes from the Browns.
I have to ask you to turn off your camera, Jeremy.
I might have to. So, and just so everyone, if you don't know me, Jeremy Mio, I help lead and secure local government systems. Also, an instructor working with Amanda on Tabletops. So I just wanted a quick introduction. I don't know if Amanda, everyone knows you. You're pretty famous. So.
I don't think that's true, but my name is Amanda Berlin, info sister on some of the online things, a little bit less now that Twitter kind of took a dumpster dive. But yeah, so I'm a lead incident detection engineer at Blue Arrow for my day job. And then, we do tabletop and playbook trainings and workshops, which is always really super fun, especially when they're Halloween themed. And then a whole bunch of other random stuff that I kind of have a slide on at the end, so we can cover that kind of later. So first, we're going to do a quick overview of incident response. We get a little bit more into this in the training that we do give, but there are some amazing full-on incident response trainings that are out there that we can recommend and put in chat later on. But this is just going to be kind of one little slide. So you can kind of tie incident response to zombie preparedness, right? Because, you can look at any attack just like a zombie attack. So what is in your zombie preparedness kit for your organization? So you can prepare, which is the first thing that you should do in any IR framework in relating to zombies or not. So right there, you see you need to learn how to build a survival kit and make a plan. So what is in that plan? So you're going to want to stock up on supplies, right? You want to stock up on things like patch your have a patching program to update your systems. You want to have a plan to train your employees on prevention. This is all preparedness activities, and then actually developing detailed response plans. So that's definitely one of the first things you want to do. You need to know that you have to have boards set aside to board up your windows for zombies. Also, there's, I don't know, Jeremy, can you think of any other preparedness activities that could deal with both zombies and attackers?
Well, you need to have your escalation plan in place. Who you're going to call. I know on the CDC one, you have to Ghostbusters know the police staff and tour their vehicles. That's an interesting thing on there. Make sure you know who you're going to between your legal, your escalation plan, have it in place. Let those people know they're on the escalation plan. A lot of people put legal and they put some other, things in their escalation plan. They never talk to those people. So you should probably let them know. And always have predetermined quarantine and isolation procedures. A lot of people on the fly try to figure out how to isolate and board up their areas for the oncoming zombies or all the hackers out there, or criminals, we should say, cyber attackers. So just having those things predetermined, you don't want to try to learn how to isolate something on the fly when you could have it something predetermined or some type of quarantine process.
Yeah. And then you also, the next step in this preparedness framework is going to be the detection and analysis. So you kind of want to keep a watchful eye out for zombies, right? There are going to be certain ways that you need to detect them breaching your perimeter. Same way, if there's a zombie on the other end of the computer, if they're going to try and breach your network perimeter, you want to have plans set aside, and we'll cover a couple of those later, some examples of some detection playbooks, right? And analysis around those and different ideas of what you need to do for detection. And Jeremy already talked a little bit about containment. So you want to learn how to learn and have playbooks set aside for isolation. So if you have any kind of infection, whether it be from a zombie bite or infection on an endpoint, you want to have some sort of plan around what that containment entails. Whether it's, like headshot to the zombie, I guess, or shutting down a server. I guess that might be the same thing. I'm not really sure how to make that correlation without sounding really gross. So yeah, that's the containment phase of this IR framework. And then you have to worry about eradication. Usually that doesn't go well in any zombie apocalypse movies, is the eradication part. It's either one way, one side or the other that's winning. But you have to actually worry about getting rid of any kind of breach or files or anything that came from that attack, right? After you've contained it, you actually have to get rid of it. And then recovery and post-incident activities. So recovery is just doing things like restoring, that might be rebuilding your hospital after the zombie apocalypse probably started there, or restoring systems. You have to validate your data integrity. Those should also be parts of your preparation, right? Is working through making sure your database backups work, or making sure you can recover from your AD server being breached, or from somebody putting an admin account in your Office 365, something like that, right? You have to make sure you can actually recover from that stuff. And then post-incident activity is kind of just going back through everything that you've been through and making sure there aren't any ways that you could make it better by calling CDC first, or just I'm trying to make a correlation between that, but yeah. So post-incident activity, usually at the end of an event, you're conducting some kind of forensic analysis and making your plan better for the next time. All right. So the definition of a tabletop exercise, kind of, right? Because we have a little bit extra on here. So discussion-based sessions where you're going to meet informally in kind of a classroom setting. I'm sure many of you have seen Backdoors and Breaches or played it or whatever. The same idea. And with this, we'll go a little bit deeper into what those are. And you're going to discuss your role, other people's roles, and what you're going to do during an emergency, and in responses to specific emergency situations. So in this case, zombies, werewolves, vampires. And as I was writing this, I was having some terrible terror related things with teenager. So I figured I'd just go ahead and add that on there, because teenagers are also scary. Go ahead, Jeremy. Do anything else with this? I've just, taken over the.
Yeah.
scary stuff.
So the tabletops are important. So that's what a lot of our training is focused on. We go through, like Amanda said, the incident response bits and pieces. Very important to have a framework around when you're conducting any type of exercise. So we go through the primer there, and then really focus on tabletop exercises and how to do that in a way that you get the most return on investment. There are a lot of tabletops that last, days, weeks, etc. And it's a really big ordeal. We try to break those up in the meaningful learning parts. So we'll go through how we recommend to do tabletops, especially for small organizations or medium and large organizations, just getting into tabletop exercises, because as everything in cybersecurity, as well as zombie a zombie infestation and issue, all scary things. And hopefully the tabletop exercises, as scary as they are, can prepare you.
Should have a teenager-based tabletop exercise.
That would be good. We could add that in there as a different model.
I have so many examples daily. All right.
So as we were talking about our goals and objectives around tabletops, breaking those scenarios into meaningful learning points. We can have a lot of large scenarios. A lot of scenarios can spin it into different types of responses, multiple responses. A lot of what if scenarios. You want to break those into meaningful learning points and really focus on specific talking points. We recommend always read it loud, clear, or screech it, as we are in the spooky sense. I'm sure people love that in the office. And focus down back to the incident response. Why we go through the foundation of incident response, even though it is better focused in some other classes that go right down to the details. Everyone needs a foundation. This is a good way, not only for your cybersecurity professionals or staff, but also IT and others, to be familiar with incident response frameworks, or that there is a framework in dealing with anything, small events to an incident to a larger potential breach. So you always want to focus your learning point or your talking points on those sections of your incident response framework. It helps everyone compartmentalize each one of those steps. So even if you're doing something pretty routine, you're still going through the identification, detection, containment, mitigation, and obviously we're working on the preventive and communications, and always working through that loop. It's really good. It kind of drills it in if you include that with your tabletops. But overall, the objective is, again, to have that productive discussion and identify those gaps and prioritize them. We'll go through, after action reports and really go and really making sure you're recording and signing off and having some type of plan around the gaps for identifying them, or what you need to better prepare for them, or hopefully eliminate them in some form or fashion. A lot of places do their tabletops and just kind of leave it. It's a plan, gets there, it never gets implemented. And, everyone, 3 years later still has local administrative privileges everywhere. But there are steps to try to get there.
Yeah. And honestly, a lot of times these can just be an exercise in good communication across teams. So we've talked to a couple people recently that one of their goals for their tabletop exercise is not only to align to a certain playbook and framework, they also want to work on communication between director level positions and people actually doing incident response in the tabletops. So that can just be a goal in itself, right? That you have better communication in between different groups of people inside an organization.
Yeah, it's a good, very good point. A lot of places want to go right into the depths of the cybersecurity tabletop realm of, everything's hacked and how do we technically separate from a tactical and a technical perspective. But sometimes you want to just focus on that communication, start there. Because that's where a lot of places lack, and it's good to build those relationships as well. So when you do these, what do you do and what do you don't do? Well, we always recommend a single individual to facilitate. That could be somebody in the security realm, a director manager, or you can kind of get other people involved as you do a little more tabletops. That's always fun, especially in the small ones. We're talking about 15 minutes to an hour kind of tabletops. We'll go through different scenarios here, but it doesn't have to be, 4 hours or have someone facilitate 4 hours or a couple days. You could start with these things. You want to keep on track with that discussion guide. So you want the discussion guide, and we'll go through an example here that has those focus on the learning points. Even though your scenario might cover the entire incident response framework or multiple different playbooks, you might want to just focus on communications. So you want to have your discussion guide on those and how we communicate, regardless of how the end result of the entire item is. You want to get these into pieces and parts, or you'll never, have a lot of progress trying to tackle everything all at once, depending on the organization. You do want to include different members of different business units at some point. You might want to understand how just the small team handles these and then expand it, but then getting a different observers are very helpful, especially when you're dealing with other facets of the organization. You might want the scenario tailored to something that involves those organizations, like a legal or an HR, and something more applicable to something they might be involved with. Insider threat, right? Maybe HR would be included in that, and legal as well, right? Versus a ransomware where they're probably notified, but maybe not as involved potentially. And as always, especially in the spooky season, you have to wear garlic necklaces and carry a holy wire. If you don't have any of those things, Amanda can send you a link in the Discord, and
I'm pretty sure you can buy them on Amazon.
They might not be real. I don't know. So maybe not certified. They might not be ANSI or ISO certified, but we can go through that and help you get to your compliance for the proper things for vampire or any spooky repellent. Again, you want to stay away from the creepy, scopy, creepy. So you don't want to go away. Don't want to go scope of the exercise. You can get into that what if game. You always want to complete that after action report. We'll go through a little bit of what that is, but just make sure you have someone documenting that. It might be the facilitator, it might be somebody else. That's important. Even if it's high level stuff, start adding that to some type of registry and recording them, and then at least following up on them in some type of like ongoing management meeting or escalation meeting, operation meeting. And then don't be that person, especially in the spooky. You don't want to invite vampires. You can't invite them. You need to know these rules here, and you just can't be that person. We've all experienced that person. I know Amanda has some stories on those people.
People are kind of talking about it in Discord a little bit, right? Like the Snitch said, like lack of clear communication was a big improvement after going through a real tabletop, right? Like our field and tech field in general sometimes attracts people with very strong opinions that have a hard time thinking that anything's going to go wrong with their systems or the thing that they're in charge of, the data they're in charge of, the systems, whatever. Something that we've found works fairly well is if you're the champion of this program or somebody helping build it or run it or whatever, is picking something that you're in control of and using that as an example first, right? Like say I'm in charge of, I'm a database, I'm a SQL admin, right? And I'm kind of on the security / ops team, and I'm going to use that as our first example because I'm going to kind of throw myself under the bus and I'm going to say, yes, I, took a vacation and missed my monthly check of this database backup, and that server got ransomware. Now what are we going to do? Right? You can take certain cases like that, using yourself as an example or using somebody that is fine being an example to kind of work through those things and be a good example. And that's also going to help with that communication channel if you have harder teammates that you have to deal with.
Another thing that we recommend, because we often get those questions, how do you work with a difficult person or someone that's caught in their ways, that goes into change management and an organizational culture and all those fancy things that are very hard if it hasn't been done in an organization. And one quick recommendation, it could work, it could not, is to get the dice involved. So sometimes people if Bob says that, hey, I can do this thing. I always do this thing. It's success every time. It's like, okay, roll for it, right? You can get a little gamification in there. We'll go through how we do gamification in our training, but you can simply just get a dice, get something involved and say, okay, well, if you don't have the procedure, can't bring it up. Let's just, for all benefit of the doubt, say that it only succeeds if it's over a 10, and it succeeds if it's less of a 10, it fails. And then see, it might work, it might not work, and that just gets you to the focuses. I know that, and there's a couple questions in there about how do you constrain someone to some response paths. That's what the discussion points are. You let them kind of free form when we go through our example, free form a response, but then we want to kind of have those discussion points lead down a path. If you get to a point where you're doing these a little bit regularly, you might want to have like, hey, this is focused on a specific compliance area or framework or known gaps. So if you know you have a communication problem, then you focus on the communication and you let people know, hey, this tabletop is going to be focused on communication. This one's going to be focused on isolation due to ransomware. This one's going to be focused on business email compromise, specifically in how do we purge emails at a large scale, or this compromise and breach is going to focus on bulk password resets, or the kill switch on taking the whole network down. When do we do that? And you focus on that specific topic, and you'll be surprised how all those pieces start to kind of line up, or you get at least clarity on that one.
Yeah, and that's one of the main jobs of the facilitator, right? Is to keep everybody on track and steering, to the things that you've actually put in the agenda or the discussion points or the actual objectives that you want to hit during that specific tabletop or set of tabletops or whatever, right? A lot of times people will use parking lots or other examples of, yes, that's a great point. We definitely need to look into that. Let's write this down and put it off to the side and stay on topic and go on topic with our objective, as opposed to at certain points, it could kind of just be like squirrel. Yes, we want to deal with that. Yes, we want to deal with this. And people get worried because they have either just thought of something, or they see the potential of being able to talk about something that they're passionate about and have wanted to change or something like that. But actually not just pushing those off to the side and forgetting them, but using those as something that you want to come back to and either build future tabletops off of, or, create another meeting at some other point to actually attend to those specific things.
Yep, you could always have the response as well. Well, if the people just didn't click on links and we had the ironclad security awareness program, then we would never have this. Like, okay, thank you, Susan, for that. We'll parking lot that. We understand that. But, Bill in accounting, or, Sarah in accounting, they have to clear $10 million every week, and they have to click on everything from every who knows what type of banks. And yeah, we have to have some type of response. It's not that it's okay, but we have to, work through the organization and work through that to do the best that we can do. And again, having those discussion guides help focus, that specific part.
Yeah. And then there's one other question that I just saw the Q&A things. So new to the world of cyber, so maybe this is known, but wanted to ask, where do you get your inspiration and sources for setting up and designing scenarios? Almost everything that we've ever used has been scenarios that one of us have encountered in real life. So whether it's in our training, whether it's the ones that we're going to show today, we see breaches and attacks and stuff all the time. It may be, something that we had to do IR ourselves on, or something our customers have dealt with, or something like that.
Yep, most of our scenarios, if not all of them, stem from some type of reported incident or situation. So unfortunately,
Yeah.
there are so
and
many.
Then definitely backdoors and breaches, right? They have a bunch of amazing scenarios in those decks. Very, very well thought through, and different flavors, right? Like ICS and all those different things. Backdoors and what? All right. So next up, just a couple examples of some playbooks before we get into our first tabletop example. And go ahead.
Yeah, so we give a quick foundation. I know someone mentioned it like a fire drill, a quick foundation of instant response and how that, general framework works. We go through our tabletops, and then ultimately we also have playbooks that have some form and structure to respond to the instant response framework and specific events based on an organization's threat landscape, or however they deem needed. A lot of people ask, how do you have playbooks? What playbooks do you need? It's, you can go down, you could have 1 billion playbooks. Every single scenario can't be playbooked. But you can have, there are a lot of recommendations out there. Again, also other classes, we hit on it and hit what they are. Here's an example of what we would consider a technical playbook response. Do you know what that does? Does anyone share what that's doing? Because that's an example of a query that is, for Splunk, that's at some point in time, you may have a whole repository of these things that you may have to run on any, given events to investigate more. And it gets to the point where as a cybersecurity professional, we're having to be, kind of a little bit, query experts in whatever language your SIM or system or EDR. You might not have anything. You might have raw Windows event logs. You might have to do something. You're probably searching some system. It might not be Splunk or Cisco Splunk or whatever you want to call it. Google Splunk. Who, I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Cisco bought them. Google, maybe, I don't know who owns what anymore. But you want to really make sure you understand what that is. And we'll go in how spooky this is in the more, I would say, a better example of how a playbook can be written. If you go to the next slides here, here's another one. Here's this is KQL. Again, what is this doing? It might be a little bit more machine readable here, formatted. But what do these things do? There are so many things going on with this stuff. And these are the things that are running in the background and understanding these alerts. This would, drive a small team mad of having to know all these things. And the point is that to have these documented, so at least you know what they're doing. So if we go to kind of the next slide here, is there any of this make sense? This is already spooky enough.
Right.
But this is where we want to get into on a playbook perspective, is having a workflow, having something that's understandable. This helps for not only security professionals, but also other IT, and potentially, the auditors are going to come knocking at some point, especially if you do have a breach, and they're going to want to see documentation. I want to see if you responded appropriately. You might outsource it all, and that's fine too, but you might have to have a playbook on how that's being outsourced. How do you engage with those third parties? Those are things you still have to document, even if you have literally no security in-house staff. So you want to have some type of workflow. We recommend starting with a workflow. This is a pretty simple one for a phishing playbook, right? Someone receives the email, they report it in some fashion. You have to check some URLs. It can get bad if it has, attachments, things like that. What do you do with it? Then as you have, those code snippets, or maybe you search the email system, you search the SIM with a bunch of, querying, where do you refer to that at? So then you have a little more context instead of some giant query string that means little to nothing unless you're the query, or the detection engineer, or anything like that. So I don't know if Amanda, if you have any, comments on that, being, living and breathing that stuff, but I'm sure it gets very confusing fast.
Yeah. It depends on where you want to organize all of your playbooks. Like this is a good example of just a fairly easy overview walkthrough. Obviously you're not going to take this and have someone sit down and know exactly what every little piece of this means. Like if you can follow a flow chart and you know what all of these words mean and know how to do all of this kind of stuff, then sure. right? Like this is just to make sure you check all the boxes and get all of the information that you need and send it to the right places and create the right tickets and all of that kind of stuff. So that's more of what this is kind of used for, is kind of a skeleton of a playbook, right? When you start to create one. If we go a little bit more in depth, we start to look at these. So this is an example. This is a little bit older, but definitely still valid, of one of the Cisco detection playbooks, right? So in here, it's a little bit deeper as far as the information that it's providing and looking for. It's not, if we kind of go back to this one, while this is the skeleton, you say you want to dig in a little bit deeper and see, the objective of this would technically be phishing playbook, but there's no actually specifics on the detection or any of the actions that you need to do, or the analysis, right? So that's what this is a little bit more specific on the detection itself. So it gives you the objective. It has some kind of identifier up top, right? So that's going to go back to how you organize your playbooks. It's going to make it a little bit easier to find, right? If you know that you need to look at something that's high fidelity, that's what the HF is for, or you know that you want it to be an IDS related detection. That's what this is going to be in for, and that's how it's tagged, and that's the index that it's in this example, right? So that's the actual query where it says working, so you can actually save your queries there. Sometimes you can just point to a query if you can add a link, or if you control it in some kind of CI/CD, you can link to where it is in a repo, something like that. And then it has more information here. And this example is actually from Jeff Bullen, one of Jeff Bullinger's talks. And we have the link at the bottom there. And actually I can put the links in Discord too.
So yeah, you'll see some places when you start using specific technologies, either the technology like an email response technology, maybe it's just the email filter directly, maybe it's Microsoft with a bunch of searches and log searches. There's a lot of pre-baked stuff in a lot of this technology, but you might have to have some type of working examples like those Splunk queries and some of those other queries we had. You might need to know a little bit more about what that's doing. And this is where you can start to document those things in some type of repository, understand those things, if that makes sense to you. Again, a lot of organizations will be different if they need this level of documentation or not. But I think on the next one, this gets into a little more deeper of some of the workflows and playbooks on some specific detection.
All right, yeah, so this is another example of a way that you can kind of do that decision tree or flow chart that we saw kind of in the beginning, but a little bit more specific. So this would be a response playbook that you can save and add different links to or add different decisions to. And we create these and use these in like a mind mapping software. This one is called Xmind. And this is one that we use internally a lot to create. It's just a response playbook, right? So this is not how you're detecting it, but this is after the detection fires, what decisions do you need to make and what processes do you need to do to continue on with that IR investigation.
And this is an example of where Amanda is specifically referring to the MITRE ATT&CK framework at the top there of the specific, I guess, threat vector or attack type.
Right.
And, as you build your not only your tabletops, but your playbooks, you may refer to specific controls from a compliance perspective. If there's ISO 27001 or NIST 800-53, then there's cybersecurity framework, other types of auditing controls, maybe just the CIS controls. but also at some point you may expand and you may specifically start to go down the, I don't know, hundreds of different MITRE attack vectors. I don't know how many there are. Amanda, you might know at the top of your head the exact factorial, but definitely something there. We also see a lot of people, putting a lot of resources. There are dozens of resources for playbooks, but it's all going to be how they work in your organization. So during the tabletops, our focus is having you understand what playbooks are and how they're useful, and then doing the exercises to be able to build the right playbook for your environment using some type of incident response framework. We have a lot of resources from, I saw the incident response literally.com resources, as well as Microsoft and other CISA, other government, guidances, documents. They're all out there. It's about what works for years. A lot of those playbooks are very, very detailed and large, and may not be conducive to a team of 1, 2, or maybe 0 cyber staff.
All right, now we're going to move on to an example. So this is where we get all you involved. All right, so Igor received a call from the Monster Mash sister company, Monsters Inc. Shelley asked if he had sent over the wire payment yet for all of the spare parts they've been supplying. After asking his assistant, he assures her that everything has been paid to the new account number she provided, but Mary hasn't been receiving payment or any of his emails.
Uh-oh, what's
All right, so I mean, maybe she just didn't receive them. I say he goes about his day.
what are we gonna do?
I mean, call the FBI. I have their number around here somewhere. What's the first step here?
I think we dance the Monster Mash.
We should dance the Monster Mash. All right. We're going to start to see where the emails are going. So hopefully we have some insight into that. Maybe there's some logging. Who knows? So that's an example of a tabletop that you can kind of start off with. Now this is going to be business email compromise, right? So it kind of lends a hint to it. So you can verify the sender of the emails responded to an assistant. You can trace them, call people and validate account numbers. Maybe Mary did change the account number. In this case, she did not. So let's look at where we would go from here. This is an example of the discussion points that the facilitator would have, right? These are questions that you can kind of ask and see at this point, all right, where is that call going and who's going to be the first person to respond to something like that? So does Igor even know if he should contact somebody in security? All right, this is going to be part of the prepare step of, like, does your staff even know that that's something that should be looked into, right? Kick the dude out of the exercise for saying that could never happen. I think Greg got one of them, right? So check inbox rules, right? That should be part of your playbook. That's going to be in the identify portion, right? So mapping your discussion points to a framework like that kind of gives you different questions to ask along the way. Like, all right, pull out our potential email compromise playbook, see what questions are there and what information that we have to find out, where that information is going to actually be at in our organization, and what we need to look at to see, all right, maybe it is just a mismatch of account numbers. Maybe it's going to spam. Maybe her email client's set up wrong, right? It could be a whole bunch of different things. I'm sure the help desk can rule out a lot of those things. And then at a certain point, yeah, you're going to check the inbox rules for sure. So if you haven't done so, do you have multi-factor authentication? Usually that's a question for pretty much any kind of attack, right? As if you have multi-factor. And then do you have a communication protocol in place for like training and what kind of things people should look out for when it comes to email compromise? That should be hopefully in some training. Sometimes that sticks, sometimes that doesn't, but this is a good example of a real life use case that definitely happens fairly often.
And one thing when you're talking about communication, you might tell users how to notify, how to notify security, but how do you notify users? Like, what's your threshold? If you get an invoice scam, or some type of scam like this, and it's to, somebody with purchasing authority, do you send it out to the whole company or whole organization, or do you just send it out to the people with purchasing authority? Do you have those people? All right. I don't say we want to always second guess how to do everything during one of these scenarios, but you want to think about how do we not send people like emails constantly, right? I mean, if you sent out an email every time somebody potentially got phished, what's that doing? People are just seeing that security notification come through from security or the help desk or something, just constant, like, oh, another person got hit, another person you want them to really look at that when it's important. Now when you get something that you have to send to them and it's important for them to actually read it, yeah, you'll put read, must read, really read, for real read this time, right? You want to be very specific on the thresholds. I had those documented as well, so it's pretty easy to start to map out when you say, okay, if it's widespread, we'll notify everybody. If it's just a specific set of users, I mean, we're always notifying maybe the user that gets impacted, maybe their manager, maybe something like that. Those are things you can kind of really think about and iron out. Or maybe you do send it, you don't get it never happens to you, and you're just like, we'll send everyone all the time because it never happens to us.
Right. So for the identify, I know a lot of people in Discord definitely added a whole lot of stuff that you should definitely identify, right? So where do emails go? Look for those inbox rules. Where do you look for those inbox rules? Do you have anything logging those things yet? There's how many different places you can add inbox rules, right? You can add actual rules, you can add forwarding, you can do it on an Outlook client, you can do it in 365, it could be Google, it could be whatever, depending on where you have your email at, right? And what you use. So do you have a process in place that you like? Is there a playbook of all of the check mark things that you need to do to look for that? Another one that we usually recommend is Microsoft has a really good list of their kind of response playbooks on their website. So they have a business email compromise, they have a phishing, they have all of these different things of where you check and what, right, during something like this.
And they include the license levels needed for the different logging.
Right,
so
right. Which I have changed recently. So now you get a little bit more logging, after they publicly shared their keys. And then you can map things to contain and eradicate. So did it go any further than business email compromise? So this example, there is an email that was compromised. The reason that they're not getting them. So this is something that you need to think of as being like, this is the thing that happened. And as a facilitator, I'm going to not actually tell anybody that these things happened, but these are where the questions and answers lead to. So what question and scenario you're giving them, and what created that question, what created that scenario. It's your job as a facilitator to tie those two things together through these discussion points and questions, right? So as people ask, they're like, oh, well, I'm going to check those inbox rules. Correct. There is an inbox rule in there that's forwarding to an unknown address, and anything to do with the word invoice or wire transfer is sending outside of the organization and then automatically deleting that sent from the sent items, right? So that's another thing that you can have on your internal game master list of things as people move along with this exercise. And then you have different discussion points underneath that can kind of go along with that full-blown scenario. So at that point, you can say, did the attack go any further than this email compromise? If somebody actually has an inbox rule forwarding all of those really important emails elsewhere, that means they had credentials at some point, right? So Now what? When did that email rule get created? And how far back do you have to go and look at those authentication attempts to make sure there wasn't more, right? Make sure there aren't other inbox rules for other accounts that are doing the same kind of thing, right? So you have a lot of different ways that you can go with that. And that ties back to what was your objective for this actual tabletop exercise? Was it to prove that you needed processes in place for business email compromise, or are you trying to get multi-factor auth approved for your organization? There's a lot of different things that you can do to kind of I use manipulate in a good sense, but manipulate that scenario to go towards the objective that you and your team want.
Yeah, and these are examples. We went through all of the, somewhat the incident response framework, but we might also just include one of these, right? If we're really just working on that identity protection, if it's not multi-factor, maybe it's banned password lockouts or some other types of, security controls that we have with an identity. So maybe we just focus on that. But again, we went through all of it, but you could just focus on specifically, did it go further than BC? What did we do during this to expand out, right? In any way, shape, or form, but we kind of went through all of them. And sometimes you can go through all of them if you're just trying to figure out what to focus on.
And then you can go to the recovery phase too. So an example of that is who outside of your organization should be notified of that kind of incident. At this point, it's a financial one, right? You're assuming that those wire transfers that somehow got changed just via an email, which is, terrible. I think somebody pointed out, definitely should look at those policies in place for being able to change, wire transfers via email. But who do you need to notify? Is this something that you can bring a larger team in for? Is this the fiscal, you bring in the people that are actually in charge of the fiscal team, or legal, or maybe C levels at some point, right, to see that this could have some kind of larger business impact. What time we got here? Oh, we're kind of running out of time. All right. Talking too much.
Double time. All
right,
here.
double time. All right. Tabletops, IR framework, playbooks. Oh my. Times gamification equals Monster Mash. So here's a little example of what we do. Think of kind of everything that we talked about, but also with a really cool Discord bot. So little subtle nod to our training that we're giving, which is December or something, wherever the Snake Oil Summit is. We're doing training again. And this is a little bit of an example. Jeremy, you want to go into that?
Yeah, so we are the game masters. I know someone asked about the breach masters. We may have to trademark that. So that was pretty, I did see that, and you're acknowledged, and it was a great idea. But we are the game master because we have the cyber dungeon master, cyber game master. We go through, here's an example of some critical successes, them rolling, getting some, they rolled a 1 critical failure. We have essentially a cyber tabletop version of almost like a backdoors breaches with the dice, but inside of a Discord bot. And it is pretty awesome. It's a 2-day. You get to set up the first couple days. Well, it's a 4-day, sometimes a 2-day, depending on the amount of hours we have.
16
we start
hours.
with 16 hours. There we go. Sometimes we do 2 8-hour, sometimes we do 4 4. So we go.
Or if you're really intense, we can do 16 at once.
Yeah. So, but the tabletop is the last 2 days. We break you up in organizations, and anyone can do this anytime. Obviously, we would love for you to take our training, but you can start to gamify a lot of things with dice or any type of interaction where you can go through and start building your tabletops, getting people thinking, having them roll for things. And it might take a few tabletops to get into that, but it's something we highly recommend, and it's very fun for all. So that's kind of a little bit overview of our bot. I think we have a few more slides. Again, we this is how we do it. It's very similar to backdoors and breaches. The other modification we have on there is when we're going through the building playbooks or identifying certain things, we try to have modifiers. So if you have the response, that is a big dice there. It's just taking over that whole slide.
Huge.
It's
I
a
didn't add
scary,
that.
it's a scary dice. It took over formatting and who knows what's next. So the we have some modifiers and procedures, as well as you have skilled staff. And then we have the critical failures and the critical hits that create a lot of bit fun. And we're very, very creative people. So we have all kinds of things that happen. We try to give people very specific actions. So if people are like, I don't know what to do, because again, this is built for any and all ages. So a very beginner, we do try to stress that we have people that are very getting into or aren't even in cybersecurity, but also management, and trying to connect those. So the staff level or someone new knows how management thinks of things, or how they need to be communicated to, as well as the technical staff, knowing how to, or the management staff knowing how to respond on what it really takes to respond to something from a technical perspective. Try to bridge that. So we give some people example actions here, and it's a very fun time. This helps just to get a lot of structure to a response. And here's we give the game tips using, using the playbooks. We had the final say. We do have special skills, so we try to sprinkle a little fun. You can always, phone a friend, kind of, if you will, during it, or have the certain other fun powers that organizations may have. You get split into different organizations, and as much as I talked about having the combination between technical and management, you get to split up in different roles. So if you're used to being if you're the security analyst at your company, now you may be the CEO, and you get to act and have some guidelines on how a CEO may respond. You may be the lawyer, you may be the help desk manager. We have all these type of roles, and we try to get people a little bit out of their comfort zone, understand things from different perspectives, and have fun and learn a lot.
Now I think that, oh yeah, there we go. This is our last tabletop. We do have a little bit of time for it, so that makes me happy, because I was really happy with what I wrote up for this. So your software app is about to be released. Poltergeist B&B, which is vacation home rentals for ghosts, has the ghostly community ready to scream. Frank and app dev calls to explain the computer that they're using for development testing now has a splash screen with a countdown timer after updating packages. Ada attempted to reboot, the screen doesn't go away. So this computer is not an asset on file. It's directly connected to the endpoint VLAN, not connected to any version control, and 6 months of coding is lost, and the final sprint is next week.
Oh no.
No. So examples. What are we going to do here? What are we going to do?
Right, so,
pick. Oh, go ahead.
I was saying, yeah, so pick one. So 1 through 4. Let's see in the Discord. And we'll see if that's a critical success or a failure. Right. So do you investigate more? Are we reaching out? Are we going right to law enforcement, or maybe a third party that we pay a bunch of money to? Or do we just recode everything and ask for forgiveness? Is that okay, depending on the environment, or another solution? We got some stuff in the Discord there.
I'm going to share. Discord. Got some ones, two. I don't know. I see a whole lot of ones.
All right, let's go more. Let's see.
All right, hold on. I'm going to share with you how this works. See if
just the demo gods the last 5 minutes
okay.
here.
Okay, I know, right?
Right.
So,
yeah.
We'll investigate internally. See if it works. Probably should have tested this beforehand. Ah ha ha! Oh,
19.
Dang, I got a 19.
Our bot's
Heck
still
yeah.
alive.
I definitely tested that before
You're
we started this.
investigating all of the things.
All right, so back to this share. I'm like a Zoom master. I've never bounced back and forth between sharing. Here we go. So, oh, no. Oh,
Nope.
didn't find anything.
Nope. Nothing. So again, with time, we will skip through this next one and just go through again because the game breach masters have final say here. Again, it's funny that someone, I think Nathan in the chat here just asked about decryptor. That's huge. If you reach out to the third party decryptor, all is well, right? You need to really go through. There are a lot of places that haven't gotten hit or don't have a huge cybersecurity posture or knowledge. They might have one person, might have 0 people. You might be an MSP giving services for them, and sometimes people get hit with old malware, old ransomware, and they have decryptors. Yeah, you might get hit with a new one, and there's some fancy decryptor just leaked out because someone raided, the entire broker. But that's rare. But you might just get hit with old ransomware. As much as you can do a lot of other things, there may be a decryptor. You never know. So that's something you want to make sure that you're always understanding. And then, again, checking backups and other things as well, but you might not have any. This was an offline asset. That was the whole, point there. But, you got, sometimes you just have to redo everything. If not, then the company goes under and, find another job.
Right. And then I know we don't have a whole lot of time to go over it, but here is an example of those discussion points in the playbook. So again, tied to the different portions of our zombie preparedness IR plan, prepare, identify, contain, eradicate, recovery. We're not going to go through all of those because we can't run out of time.
The big thing with
the
big thing with this one was supply chain, right? Don't use, make sure you're checking third-party libraries when you're adding the code packages and making sure that you have version control and things, and not, potentially, developers or any type of shadow IT doing things in a vacuum before it's reporting up to the central repositories. You really need to have that understanding. That's the gist of this playbook, and something that you can get deeper into, and is needed that we see, time in, time out. So with that, we're wrapping up. We went through the tabletop incident response overview. We went through some of the playbook concepts. We went through gamification. We kind of gave a little mini demo, and we're here. We have the snake oilers in December, and 7th and 8th. Oh, it's right there at the bottom there, and we're here. I know that we answered questions live. That's a nice thing about having 2 people. I don't know if there were any other questions in Discord. We might get the hook soon, so we're here.
We have a hook. That's fun.
We need to get a hook. Amanda and Jeremy, thank you very much. Also, thanks for the love of backdoors and breaches. We appreciate that.
For sure. Backdoors and what?
Yeah.
one of our favorites.
And for the person who posted the zombie emergency tabletop exercise,
Amazing.
thanks for sharing that with the rest of us.
Yeah.
That's what I like doing these, because a lot of times we get a lot of good things from the community, and we create things and they create things. And it's just a vicious cycle.
Just love sharing.
Yeah, it's not vicious. I don't know if it's vicious.
All right, so join us for the Snake Oil Summit in December. If you're like, what is snake oil? Well, in the United States, a long time ago, people would sell snake oil as like a cure-all for everything. And some vendors do that as well in modern day society. So we're going to have a Snake Oil Summit to talk about things when it comes to, is this a cure or is this not a cure to our problems? Final thoughts. I'll start with you, Amanda. What are your final thoughts today? If you could sum up everything in one little last takeaway, what would it be for everyone here?
I hope everybody has an amazing Halloween and creates some kind of scary tabletop.
Yeah.
Based off of anything that we've shared or anything anybody else has shared.
This reminds me of when I binge watch a show and I get to the Christmas episode and I'm like, it's like June.
Right,
That's fine.
right.
Jeremy, final thoughts for today. What is your last takeaway?
I would say for anybody, start somewhere. Just having one scenario, pick one we had here, pick anything, start somewhere, get people in a room, get them, 45 minutes. You can go through, have a lot of discussion, get people together, have them communicate.
Yep. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for this Antisyphon Anti-cast. If you need training, if you need any of that, you know where to find us. We got a guy on staff named Kyle. So if you and a whole bunch of your coworkers want to take training all at the same time, you can always reach out to Kyle through the Antisyphon website. And with that, we'll see you all next week. We have another webcast, another Anti-cast. We just keep doing this. We keep coming back because you keep coming back. So we'll see you next time. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Ryan, kill it with fire, like you were killing a zombie with fire, but you actually have to use like a headshot because fire doesn't really work on a zombie. You got to still
Silver
take
bullet. Silver
Silver-
bullet.
And the werewolf?
For a well, yeah.
Samurai sword,
Just kill it.
lop the head